welcome to everybody and also our guests that are joining us via YouTube. So tonight's talk is given to us by Katrin Raynor-Evans. I made that mistake earlier, didn't I? Katrin is a fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society and the Royal Geographical Society, and also a member of Cardiff Astronomical Society and the Astro Space Stamp Society. So you can see her Astro Stamp credentials shining there. She writes for some magazines that we will have heard of, like Sky at Night and Astronomy, and some, I presume, stamp-related magazines called Stanley Gibbons and All About Stamps, which we probably be less familiar with. She's currently writing her first book and is astronomer for Country Focus on BBC Radio Wales. And, very impressively, Asteroid 446500 is called Katrin Raynor and is named after her, which is a rather marvellous thing. So without further ado, can I hand over to Katrin to tell us all about exploring space and astronomy through philately?
Thank you very much. I will just share my screen. You can see that?
We can. I can.
Excellent. I'm just going to hide the floating control. Oh, hang on. Just going to stop my video as well, so I'm not looking at my face. And I just need to hide this floating control as well. There we go. So you can see me and hear me, yeah? Oh, not see me, but you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, fab. Okay, so yeah, thank you. Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. As you know, my name is Katrin, and tonight I'm going to discuss what we can learn about astronomy through philately, and I will show you some examples of what stamps exist globally celebrating the subject of astronomy. And this is a perfect example of an astronomy themed stamp. It's one of my favorites, and it was issued by the United States Postal Service in 2017 to celebrate the total solar eclipse seen in the United States. And it was the first total solar eclipse seen along a very narrow path across the US since 1918. And it's actually one stamp, but the design is made of thermochromic ink. And that means that when heat is applied, the color changes. So you can see on the left-hand side there, that is the stamp. The moon is obscuring the sun. You can see the sun's corona, the outermost part of the sun's atmosphere. And when heat is applied to the stamp by pressing a thumb or finger on it, the full moon appears, which you can see there on the right-hand side. And this is actually a real photograph of a total solar eclipse that was taken in Libya in 2006. And the world of stamp collecting is a science and art in itself. There are so many facets of the subject, and this is just a brief introduction. I could talk for a very long time about it, so I've just chosen some subjects that I hope will interest you all, get you excited, and give you a flavour of what it's all about. So I was a bit distracted there with all the things that kept popping up. Okay, so my talk. So what's so great about philately? I'll just briefly talk about that. Then I'll give you a brief introduction to philately. Then I'll talk about the world's first astronomy stamps. Then the global spread of astronomy on stamps. Then I'll give you a few examples of astronomy stamps issued in the UK. Then I'll take a look at astronomy and philately and organising a collection. Then I will be talking about the future of philately, what we can look forward to, and then how to get started in collecting astronomy and space themed stamps. Okay, so what's so great about philately? Well, it's a really unusual way of and creative way of learning about history, geography, science, culture, politics, even animals and comic books, and of course astronomy and space. And there's literally a stamp for anything. And I found, so just to give you a few examples of some stamps that exist, we have this stamp that was issued in Egypt in 1986. It depicts some hieroglyphs. Then a set of 4 stamps were issued in the UK celebrating the British weather in 2001. And there are even stamps for the dinosaur theme, which is a really interesting branch of thematic philately called paleophilately. And we have a stamp that was issued in Switzerland celebrating chemistry. Again, a really interesting branch of thematic philately called chemophilately. And we have 4 stamps here issued in 2019, which celebrates hip hop culture in the United States. And I found this quote on the internet, which I thought summed up the hobby really well. Stamp collecting is so much more than a hobby. It's a lifestyle, a community, and it is a lifestyle for me now. You know, I'm writing about it, I study it, and the community that I'm part of online is brilliant. I've made some really fantastic connections. And thanks to social media, such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, philately is really enjoying a boom amongst younger people at the moment. So just to give you a few examples of some of the people that are out there on social media, if you're interested, on the bottom left there, we have a guy called the Punk Philatelist. He has a blog about stamps, and he believes that they're a vibrant expression of pop culture. And in the middle there, we have Graham Beck, and he has this fantastic YouTube channel called Exploring Stamps, and he's exploring the world one stamp at a time. And on the right-hand side there, Philately, my friend John Simper, he's very active on social media, and he offers a monthly subscription on a website called Patreon. You can subscribe to different tiers at a monthly cost, and he'll post out stamps and first day covers and all sorts. And yeah, it's a way to escape and unplug from the real world. And for me, it's a way of researching and learning about astronomy and philately, so the 2 subjects, and I aim to promote both of these subjects. So I'll just give you a brief introduction as to what philately is, because some of you may not know. Again, just another example here of some fantastic astronomy themed stamps. So issued in July last year, I think it was. And this was called the Sun Science issue. And it was produced by the United States Postal Service. And you can see there's 10 images that celebrate the science behind NASA's ongoing exploration of our nearest star. And the images display common events on the sun, such as solar flares, sunspots, and coronal loops. So what is philately? Well, the word philately is the English transliteration of the French philately. It's taken from the Greek root word meaning file, an attraction or affinity to something, and atelier meaning exempt from duties and taxes, and it forms the word philately. And it's a study of postage stamps and postal history, but it also refers to the collection, appreciation, and research activities on stamps and other philatelic products, such as Cinderella stamps, poster stamps, and air mail. So obviously that's mail that's been in the air, an aeroplane, sea mail that's been transported by boats, and space mail. So yeah, mail that's even made it into space. So I just wanted to give you a very quick example of a astronomy themed Cinderella stamp. So Cinderella stamps are virtually anything that resembles a postage stamp, but it's not actually issued for postal purposes by a government postal administration. So example, Scout Post, if you've ever had a Christmas card through your letterbox and it's had a stamp on it, it's not actually an official government postal stamp, it's a Cinderella stamp. So these stamps there on the left-hand side, these are the Solar System Rocket Service stamps, a really interesting Cinderella issue by Broadway Approvals. And these were based in Denmark Hill in London, and they advertised in boys' comics from 1955 till the 1970s. And you may notice, depending on the size of your screen, that the perforations on the stamps, there aren't actually perforations at all, but just dots printed in ink. And philately involves more than just stamp collecting or the study of postage. It is possible to be a philatelist without owning any stamps. For instance, stamps being studied may be very rare or reside only in museums. And you may be familiar with this stamp. It was in the news last year. It's the 1 cent magenta. It's a very famous and rare stamp. There's only one left in the world. And previous to June last year, it sold for $9.4 million. But yeah, in June last year, it sold for $8.3 million and was bought by Stanley Gibbons. Okay, so reasons for collecting. Why do people collect stamps? Well, there's there's a lot of reasons. Most people start off collecting and sorting out stamps by country or theme. You can buy packs of stamps online to get you started. And I think people soon realize that it's a hobby that can quickly get out of control, and it can seem very overwhelming. But once you realize your main interest, you can focus on that. So some people like to collect stamps for the gum alone, and this can affect the value of the stamp, but it's also of interest to collectors. So stamps printed on the gum side by mistake are sought after by collectors with an interest in common varieties, for example. And perforations, these are a way of separating the stamps. And for some stamp collectors, the perforations do matter because they're not only a way to distinguish between different stamps, but also, they form part of the condition of the stamps. And in rare circumstances, a stamp may have different perforations on opposite sides. We've got paper and ink as well. People like to collect stamps because of the type of paper it's printed on or the variations in ink color. And of course, rarity and errors. So on the bottom left there, you can see in the inverted Jenny, which is a 24-cent United States postage stamp. It was first issued in 1918. And as you can see, the image of the aeroplane is upside down. And it's probably the most famous error in American philately. And only one pane of 100 of these stamps was ever found, and it makes this error one of the most prized in all philately. And just to give you an example of an astronomical error, this stamp that was issued in Czechoslovakia in 1967, which you can see in the middle there, and I've just zoomed in and blown up the top right corner, which you can see on the image there on the right. So the engraver of the stamp mixed up 2 letters of the alphabet so that the constellations of Lepus and Lupus were actually transposed. And yeah, of course, people also like to collect stamps because of the theme. I'm a thematic collector because I like to collect astronomy themed stamps. But it's not just about the stamps. So you may remember when I explained what philately is, I mentioned other philatelic material. So it's not just the stamp that is of interest to the collectors. Philatelists like to collect first day covers, which is a postage stamp on a postal card or a stamped envelope, which is franked on the first day that the stamp is authorized for use. And the stamps are often affixed to specially designed envelopes, often with the design of the theme that's being celebrated. So we have a lovely example here of a first day cover that was issued in Canada in 2018, and it celebrates the 150th anniversary of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. And the images on the stamps were actually taken by a famous astronomy author called Alan Dyer. I'm sure some of you may have some of his books. So you can see the stamp on the left there, it's an image of the Milky Way, on the right hand side, the Northern Lights. And yeah, we have a lovely example here from the UK that celebrates the theme or the subject of astronomy, and was issued in 2002. You can see the stamps there have been put onto this beautiful solar system cover that was produced by a company called Benham, I think that was. So it's very colourful, it's very attractive. And yeah, with the growing global celebration of space and astronomy through philately, some covers made it beyond our atmosphere into space aboard shuttles or Apollo missions. And this branch of philately is called Astro philately. And we have a very famous postal incident. So the Apollo 15 postal cover incident, for example, it is notorious. Unknown to NASA, the crew of Apollo 15, who were Al Worden, David R. Scott, and James B. Irwin, they agreed to carry 400 unauthorized postmark covers aboard the spacecraft and subsequently onto the surface of the moon. And upon the astronauts' return, the covers were postmarked again aboard the recovery ship of called the Okinawa. And Hermann Seeger, the German stamp dealer involved in the plan, he sold some of the covers for prices in the thousands. And when news of the flown covers reached NASA, the astronauts were reprimanded and forbidden to fly in space ever again. So if you ever see a cover like this in your local Oxfam shop or your local antique shop, buy it because they are worth a lot of money. And just quickly, presentation packs. So these typically contain a full set of new stamp issues. It comprises a folded card containing detailed notes about the stamps, and a card with clear strips for holding the stamps in place. And it's all held then in a clear sleeve. So these stamps issued in 2002 celebrating astronomy. On the back of the cardboard cover, if you like, you can learn all about telescopes from Herschel to Hubble. And when you fold out the cardboard inlay, you can have a lovely star map there. So yeah, I just think it's a great example of learning from stamps without actually opening a book or even looking on the internet. And hand stamps or cancellations alone are of interest to some collectors. And for astronomy philatelists, there are some wonderful hand stamps available. So these are simply ink stamps used to cancel the stamp, so they can't be reused. And they come in a variety of shapes and sizes, pictures and ink color. Imaginative hand stamps are eye-catching and they form an important part of the cover. And the stamps on the covers can be cancelled with the bog standard usual first day of issue date stamp at a post office, but often people will send the covers away to a special hand stamp centre to have the stamps cancelled with a special pictorial design which adds to the theme of the cover. And if collecting postmarks is your thing, well, this is called markophilie and you're a markophilist. So yeah, I just wanted to show you some examples here. So on the top right, we have a lovely pictorial hand stamp which was produced for the Space Science issue in 2012. And on the bottom right there, a lovely postmark which was produced for the 50th anniversary of Man on the Moon. And that was in the United States. But not all postmarks produced are, they don't correspond necessarily with the first date issue of a stamp. So for example, in the middle there, we have a brilliant cancellation commemorating Comet Bennett in 1970, and it's perihelion, or its closest approach to the Sun, on the 20th of March 1970. And in November 2018, on the left-hand side there, you can see a postmark that was produced to celebrate InSight, a robotic lander landing on Mars. And can you sign my cover, please? This is something that I say a lot. Autographs from eminent scientists and astronomers form a really special part of my collection. So I've got autographs ranging from Dr. Alan Chapman, Ian Ridpath, who you can see there on the left-hand side, and he's the chairman of the Astro Space Stamp Society. I've got Jim Al-Khalili's signature, and some recent ones. The top image there, I contacted Pete Lawrence and Chris Lintop from The Sky at Night, and they very kindly gave me their addresses, and I posted the cover off to them, and they signed it and sent it back. And in the bottom there, then I've got Dame Jocelyn Bell Burnell's autograph. Again, I just emailed her. She very kindly gave me her address, posted it out, and she sent it back. So it was very, very easy. And here we have a cover that shows John Glenn's signature. He was the first American to orbit the Earth. But I'm not sure if this is an authentic handwritten signature. It could be an auto pen, and an auto pen is a device used for the automatic signing of a signature or autograph. And these are often used then when celebrities or famous people get hundreds of letters each day. And there's a great website out there called the Astronaut Auto Pen Guide. It's a fantastic resource to check if any covers that you may have that are signed by astronauts are genuine or not. Okay, so all of this is great, but what can these 4 pieces of philatelic information teach us about astronomy? So if you remember, it's about researching the stamps and the dates. So yeah, the stamp, the postmark, the signatures on the cover, the cachet, which is an illustration on the left-hand side of the envelope. It can all unravel a factual account about an astronomical event, such as the centenary of general relativity. So here we have the cover. You can see we've got the stamps, postmarks, we've got some autographs, and the cachet there on the bottom left. So each stamp showcases work of Einstein and Hawking. So we've got Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, an image of gravitational waves and Hawking radiation, and then 2 black holes colliding and a black hole. And a silver postmark, or 2 postmarks in this case, were used to cancel the stamps on the 1st of July 2016, which is a date that the stamps were issued. And the cachet tells us what the stamps are celebrating, and it also tells us that they were launched at Starmus in 2016, which is an international festival focused on celebrating astronomy. And the cover has been signed by Professor Kip Thorne and Professor Bernard Schutz. And I met Kip Thorne in October 2019 at a lecture at Cardiff University. So he's a very famous American theoretical physicist, known for his contributions in gravitational physics and astrophysics, and he was awarded a Nobel Prize in 2017. And if you've ever seen the film Interstellar, he was the scientific consultant for the film. So yeah, he had just opened up a new physics laboratory at Cardiff Uni, and he delivered a talk. And Professor Bernard Schutz was also in attendance. And I just recently interviewed Bernard for the Royal Astronomical Society, following his recent Eddington Medal Award for his work in gravitational waves. So I knew I was going to this talk, and I knew that they were both going to be there. So I took along this first day cover, and they both very kindly signed it. And I just think this is a really great example of what philately can teach someone about astronomy. So for example, if I passed this cover to someone who knew little about general relativity or cosmology, they could take this away and do hours of research looking at the details on the stamps, or who these people were that had signed the first day cover. And I just wanted to focus in on these stamps because I think they're absolutely beautiful, a fantastic set. So the images are actually printed on iridescent foil, which really makes them unique and eye-catching. And I had great fun researching these because my knowledge of cosmology isn't great. And it was really interesting to delve deep to find out what the words and diagrams meant. So on the top left there, we have Einstein's famous equation, his theory of special relativity that expresses the fact that mass and energy are the same physical entity and can be changed into each other. Then we have Stephen Hawking there, and the Hawking-Birkenstein or Birkenstein-Hawking equation. And on the right-hand side, we have the famous trousers diagram, which represents two black holes colliding. And on the bottom left, we have an image of, or a diagram of Hawking radiation. And this diagram is based on a blackboard sketch that was sent to the designers of the stamps from Cambridge University where Stephen Hawking worked. Then we have a diagram of black hole and a diagram there of gravitational waves there on the right-hand side. So you might all be wondering, well, what was the world's first astronomy stamp? Well, the first astronomy themed stamp dates to 1887, when Brazil issued a perforated stamp. It's buff and blue in colour. It depicts Crux Australis, the Southern Cross, which is an asterism of the constellation Crux seen in the Southern Hemisphere. And the asterism is astronomically accurate on the stamp, with Acrux and Gacrux pointing the way to the South Celestial Pole. And it's illustrated as if the observer were looking up to the sky from Earth. And here is the stamp. And stars are a really symbolic part of the Brazilian flag. They represent the constellations in the Southern Hemisphere and show how they were seen from Rio de Janeiro during the early hours of the morning on November 15th, 1889, which was the day the country shifted from an empire to a republic. So as you can see, the Southern Cross constellation is a really important part of the history and culture. So it's understandable it would feature heavily on stamps. And as you will see over the next few slides, the Southern Cross was a favourite to print on Brazilian stamps for almost 10 years, with the colour and size of the stamp evolving over that time. So the world's second astronomy stamp, well, that was produced in Brazil again. 3 years later, in 1890, the Brazilian Post Office issued a further series of perforated postage stamps featuring the Southern Cross, but this time in a variety of colours and values, which you can see there on the top right-hand side. And then the asterism featured for a second time in 1890, but this time on perforated newspaper stamps, which is the images there on the bottom left. And newspaper stamps are stamps that were used to pay for the cost of mailing newspapers or periodicals. But for this design, the asterism was illustrated shining above the Sugarloaf Mountain, Brazil's world famous landmark. And then the stamps were used again in 1898. The stamps were reissued as newspaper surcharge stamps. And these were overprinted with the year and stamp value, which you can see on the bottom right-hand side. And the term surcharge in philately describes any type of overprint that alters the price of a stamp. So surcharges can raise or lower the face value of existing stamps when prices have changed too quickly, for example, or just simply to use up surplus stocks. And a star appears. Venus, the morning star, appeared on a set of stamps issued in Brazil in 1894 and is the first stamp illustrating or featuring a planet. And these stamps are known as Madrugada Republicana, the Republican dawn, and commemorate the beginning of the Republican period. And as I said previously, on the 15th of November 1889, a group of military officers known as Republican Dawn overthrew Emperor Dom Pedro II, with the fall of the monarchy taking place around 8 AM that day. And research of astronomical charts has shown that Venus was visible in the morning sky at the time of the fall of the monarchy, affirming that the bright star on the stamp is undoubtedly Venus. So jumping ahead now to the 20th of June 1930, the fourth Pan-American Congress of Architects was held in Rio de Janeiro. And to commemorate this event, 3 stamps, from what I believe, were issued, including a 300 race stamp, which illustrates the Southern Cross above the Sugarloaf, with the addition of 2 columns or an architrave in the foreground. And if you compare this image to the previous stamps that have been issued, you may notice that the asterism is a mirror image of its true self. So the mirror image of the asterism on the 1930 stamp was perhaps illustrated as if the observer were looking down on the celestial sphere, as sailors and astronomers would have done when using an armillary sphere or an astrolabe for navigation. And if you're unfamiliar with an armillary sphere, then here's one here featuring on a stamp in 1985, celebrating the return of Halley's Comet. And after all, the Southern Cross is depicted in reverse on the flag, and an astrolabe features on the Empire of Brazil flag, again tying in with Brazil's nautical history. But I'm not entirely sure why the illustration of the Southern Cross was changed at this particular time on the stamp. If any of you guys know, please let me know. So the global spread of astronomy on stamps, the astronomical theme slowly spread to other countries. And so I just got a few examples here. So in 1930, Italy produced a stamp depicting flying boats and the Southern Cross, and it celebrates the transatlantic seaplane squadron flight from Rome to Rio de Janeiro. And in 1941, Norway issued a stamp featuring fishing boats and the aurora. And the 50th anniversary of the Mizusawa Latitude Observatory was celebrated on a stamp issued in Japan in 1949. And in that year, the same year, Ecuador celebrated the Equatorial Line Monument, which marks the position of the equator. San Marino celebrated the International Year of Astronomy in 2009. Poland celebrated space exploration in 1970. And in 1981, the Hubble Space Telescope featured on a stamp issued in the United States. So whilst all countries all over the world, from Colombia, Nigeria, Japan, Russia, they all celebrated astronomy and humankind's achievement in space, the UK did not start commemorating astronomy in space until much later. In 1966, the Royal Mail issued a stamp depicting a radio telescope at Jodrell Bank. It's bright yellow in colour, it costs 4 pennies, and the stamp was issued within a set of 4, with each image celebrating a different aspect of British technology. And in 1970, the Royal Mail issued a stamp commemorating the 150th anniversary of the Royal Astronomical Society. It was issued within a set of 5 stamps, and it celebrates anniversaries in the UK. As you can see, it's pink in colour, and the stamp depicts William Herschel holding a sketch of Uranus, which he discovered in 1781. We've got Francis Bailey in the middle there, and Bailey's beads are named after Francis Bailey, and he explained the phenomena in 1836. And Bailey's beads are an arc of bright spots seen during a total or annular eclipse. And he was the president of the Royal Astronomical Society 4 times. And on the right-hand side there, we have John Herschel, son of William, and he was a mathematician and astronomer. And amongst many, many things, he named 7 moons of Saturn. And finally, we have Herschel's 40-foot telescope, which was constructed in Slough between 1785 and 1789. So yeah, again, very, very small piece of paper, tiny stamp. You can glean a lot of information from it. You know, you could take it away. Who are these people? What's Herschel holding? What is the Royal Astronomical Society? And how on earth do you build a 40-foot telescope? So I've just chosen a few examples of astronomy stamps issued in the UK over recent years. So in 2002, I showed these previously, the Royal Mail issued a miniature sheet of stamps celebrating British astronomy. And whilst the pictures are very attractive, unfortunately, there seems to be a lack of connection to British astronomy and astronomers, because all the images here were taken using the Hubble Space Telescope. And in 1768, James Cook boarded the ship Endeavour in Plymouth and sailed to Tahiti. The trip took around 8 months, and the purpose of the trip was to view the transit of Venus with the aim to gather astronomical information to measure the solar system. And the Royal Mail issued a set of 6 stamps in August 2018 to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the voyage of James Cook and his companions. And James Cook and Charles Green made drawings during their observations of the transit, and these have been used on a first-class stamp that you can see here called the Endeavour Voyage, and it's been superimposed onto an image of the sun. And one of the most interesting details of the drawings is the black drop effect that they observed during the transit, which you can see there on the stamp. And the stamp is also illustrated with a sextant, which was used for navigation purposes during the voyage. And one of the Millennium projects commemorated on stamps was the National Space Centre at Leicester, and the centre has a particular distinctive space age building. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't finished at the time the stamp was released in 2000, so it couldn't be illustrated. So instead, it's just represented, or the Millennium Project is just represented by a generic picture of the night sky. And in 1987, the Royal Mail issued 4 stamps marking the 300th anniversary of Isaac Newton's Principia. Excuse me. And despite their small size, the stamps are bursting with information about Newton's accomplishments. So the 34-pence stamp that you can see there on the bottom right portrays a satellite, along with Newton's insights on projectile motion and orbits. And just above it there, the 22-pence stamp honours his study of planetary motion through the depiction of 6 planets orbiting the Sun, on top of which is an impressive coronal loop. And the 50th anniversary of Patrick Moore's BBC TV programme, The Sky at Night, was commemorated by a set of 6 colourful and attractive stamps released in 2007. And the designs show, for example, the Cat's Eye Nebula, you've got the Saturn Nebula and the Helix Nebula, and superimposed on each image is an outline of the home constellation with the location of the object marked, and all objects are identified with a number beginning with the letter C, which is their reference in Patrick's own brand Caldwell catalogue, because his full surname was Caldwell Moore. And just an example there of these stamps on a first day cover that was produced by Bradbury for the British Astronomical Association. And just quickly, stamps and scope. So last year I was reading this paper adjusting object glasses of refracting telescopes. And I was really interested to read that German telescope makers have used postage stamps to separate the objective lenses in apochromatic telescopes. And the use of postage stamps replaced the need to use mucilage, so gum, on paper or tinfoil, because obviously the stamps are already pre-gummed, if you like. So yeah, I just thought this was a really unusual example of philately and astronomy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more about this and how they went about doing that. So I'm about halfway through. I hope everyone is still there. So you've probably already noticed that everything from astronomers to telescopes to constellations, they all appear on stamps, and I've given you a real mishmash of examples. There isn't really much point in collecting stamps if you aren't going to learn something from them. And it's why I love collecting stamps with an astronomy theme so much. And Margaret Morris, who I'm sure you all know, she published a paper in 2013 called Astronomy and Philately, and she discussed the 2 subjects, and she grouped her collection into 3 main groups. And I think this is a really useful way of organising a philately collection within the subjects of astronomy. So I'm just going to give you a few of my own examples under each section of the ones that Margaret chose to illustrate what subjects we can learn in astronomy from philately in an organised and logical way. And I did add my own 4th heading or section because the topic didn't quite fit into any of the 3 that Margaret mentioned. And of course, it's probably classed as astrophilately, but it's a topic that we all know and love, and I didn't want to leave it out. So I'll be looking at the observers. I'll give you a few examples of astronomers on stamps and astronomical observatory anniversaries. So I'll just give you a few examples of the Royal Astronomical Society stamps that were issued. Then I'll be looking at observables, so a few examples of our solar system on stamps and discoveries and everyone's favourites, comets. Then the observations, so I'll be looking at astronomical instruments on stamps. And then my 4th section there, the explorers, so just briefly looking at human exploration and achievements. So I'll look at the space race and moon landing. Okay, so the observers. So we all know that astronomy is one of the oldest natural sciences, and this subject has been celebrated on stamps all over the world. Astronomy dates back to the 4th millennium BC. Babylonian astronomers were skilled observers and mathematicians, and they studied the sky and devoted their time to studying the planetary movements and adopted the use of the zodiacal belt. And they also recorded observations of comets and eclipses, and these studies were recorded on cuneiform clay tablets. And the stamp that you can see here was issued in Austria in 1965, and it depicts a cuneiform clay tablet. And these tablets show a really good understanding of arithmetic, algebra, and geometry. And the Egyptians, so by the 3rd millennium BC, Egyptians had already adopted a 365-day year, and annual flooding of the Nile was determined observing the stars. And the stamp that you can see here depicts Hathor, and it was issued in the Central African Republic in 1964. And according to ancient myths, Hathor was a sky goddess known as Lady of Stars and Sovereign of Stars and linked to Sirius. And she was originally a personification of the Milky Way, which was considered to be the milk that flowed from the udders of a heavenly cow. And China has a very long history of astronomy dating back to the 2nd millennium BC. In a 2nd century tomb, a silk roll was found, which depicts comets and is considered to be the first atlas of comets. And the stamp you can see there on the left-hand side was issued in China in 1986 and commemorates the return of Halley's Comet, and the image on the stamp echoes images that feature on the scroll. So observations of celestial bodies and scientific discoveries have shaped our way of thinking about our place in the universe. And just jumping ahead now from the ancient observers to the scientists and astronomers who changed our view of our place in the universe over the last few centuries. Copernicus is a very popular astronomer to feature on stamps. He was from Poland, and he proposed that the planets have the sun as the fixed point to which their motions are to be referred, and he featured on a Polish stamp in 1942. And here he is again on a stamp issued in Hungary in 1973 to commemorate 500 years since his birth. And the stamp next to it is a great example of a Cinderella stamp. So yeah, you wouldn't be able to use that for postage. And Tycho Brahe, or Tycho Brahe, he was a Danish nobleman, astronomer and writer known for his accurate and comprehensive astronomical observations. He was a real character. In fact, he had a false nose made of brass, which had been cut off during a sword fight. And he formed his own system, the Tychonic system, and his system correctly saw the moon as orbiting Earth and the planets as orbiting the sun, but erroneously considered the sun to be orbiting the Earth. And here he is here on a stamp issued in Denmark in 1946, which was celebrating the 400th anniversary of his birth. And Johannes Kepler, Tycho's assistant. Kepler was a convinced Copernican and considered Tycho's model to be mistaken. And he is also, of course, famous for his laws of planetary motion. And he was commemorated on a stamp in the Czech Republic in 2009. And the father of astronomy, Galileo, he was an astronomer, an engineer, and a physicist. And he is famous for his use of the telescope and making celestial observations. And he observed the phases of Venus and the 4 largest satellites of Jupiter. And he made topographical charts estimating the heights of mountains on the lunar surface, and he was celebrated on a stamp issued in Ascension in 1971. And Sir Isaac Newton, he's recognized as one of the greatest mathematicians and scientists of all time. He was born in England, and he formulated the laws of motion and made seminal contributions to optics, and he was celebrated on a postage stamp in 1987 in Grenada. He's illustrated holding the apple that was said to give him his inspiration to formulate the theory of gravity. Just have a quick drink. So the observers, just to continue the theme, you saw the stamp previously. It's a commemorative stamp issued in 1970, which celebrates the 150th anniversary of the Royal Astronomical Society. And the society was formed on the 12th of January 1820 at a tavern in London, and the society has now grown to 4,000 members and is one of the most eminent societies in the world promoting astronomy and geophysics. And in February 2020, the Royal Mail issued a set of stamps to commemorate the bicentenary of the Royal Astronomical Society. And this issue is called Visions of the Universe. There's 8 stamps you can see in total, illustrating astronomical phenomena. So we've got Comet 67P, we've got the Cat's Eye Nebula, pulsars, Jupiter's auroras, gravitational lensing, black holes. And each stamp includes one simple line of text that describes phenomena which has been discovered or investigated by British astronomers and astrophysicists. So for example, the image there on the middle left, the first class stamp that illustrates a black hole, it displays the text, "Black holes are superdense regions of space." And this is a nod to the English natural philosopher John Michell, who first suggested their existence in 1783, and the late famous British professor and theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, who made predictions about their behaviour. So these stamps were illustrated by a London-based artist called Robert Ball. I'm sure you will agree the stamps are very colourful and use of blue and red, and they bring to life these amazing phenomena in a way that photographs certainly could not. And in particular, just to go back to the black hole stamp on the left-hand side there, it's based on the work of a guy called Dr. Yunzi of University College London, and he was part of the Event Horizon Telescope team that captured the groundbreaking first image of a black hole in 2019. And he shared computer models of his work on black holes with Robert Ball, the artist, to inform the illustrated design. So I think these stamps really are a fitting celebration for the bicentenary of such a prestigious society and the contributions of British scientists and their research in this field. So the observables, what have the observers been looking at? So our solar system, it's home to the sun, 8 planets and fascinating astronomical objects, including icy comets, rocky asteroids and dwarf planets. And on the 16th of October 2012, the Royal Mail celebrated the 50th anniversary of the first British satellite, Ariel 1, and images of our incredible solar system featured on 6 detailed stamps. So using imagery taken from various probes, colour and imagination were brought to life, giving us armchair astronomers a close-up view of these mysterious worlds. And again, each image has a relationship with the UK's involvement in astronomy. So the sun is the centre of our solar system. It featured on the first class stamp, and the fiery orange image that you can see here was photographed by the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, which was a joint project between ESA and NASA. And the spacecraft continues to make observations of the sun's chromosphere, atmosphere and corona, despite it initially being only a 2-year mission. And the planets featuring on the stamp set include Venus and Mars. Venus and Mars are Earth's nearest neighbours, and the images chosen on the first class and 77 pen stamps are examples of how beautiful our fellow rocky planets are. And the exploration of Venus and Mars have strong UK connections. So the Venus Express mission was proposed by scientists at Oxford University, and the image taken by ESA's Mars Express probe was the first European mission to Mars, with the UK having involvement in 3 of the 6 onboard instruments. And Earth featured on its own stamp in 1984 when the Royal Mail commemorated the 100-year anniversary of the adoption of the Greenwich Meridian, so the world's prime meridian. And the image chosen on the 16 pen stamp is that of Earth as seen from Apollo 11, with a curved red line of 0 longitude superimposed on top. And I'm sure many of us will remember the total solar eclipse in 1999 because it was cloudy. So 7 stamps were issued in that year by the Guernsey Post Office to commemorate the eclipse. And these are a fantastic set, taking the collector or the astronomer through 5 stages of the eclipse, including first and second contact. We've got totality, and you can see Bailey's beads. And 6 stamps hold a value and can be used for postage, whilst the 7th on the right-hand side there is a Cinderella stamp and has no value. And comets. Well, these have been the cause of fascination and fear for centuries. Originating from the cold, dark outer reaches of the solar system, comets are composed of ice and rock. And you can see there on this beautiful mini sheet that was produced in India, or issued in India in 2018. You can see there's an illustration of 2 comets there. And they originate from 2 locations, the Kuiper Belt and the Oort Cloud. And comets originating from the Kuiper Belt are short period comets and can orbit the sun in less than 200 years. Whereas comets originating from the Oort Cloud take much longer to orbit the sun, often thousands of years, and are known as long period comets. So just to give you a few examples, we have this lovely stamp here that was issued in Finland in 2014 for the Signs in the Sky issue. And on the left-hand side there, we have an illustration of comet Ikeya-Seki, which was last seen in 1965. And then we have an image of Comet West, which was seen in 1976. And these stamps were issued in Congo in 1986. And Halley's Comet, so named after the famous astronomer Edmund Halley, or some of you may say Hawley. Halley's Comet is perhaps the most famous short period comet in our history due to its return period of 76 years. And some of us may see it twice in our lifetime. I was 5 when it was here the last time, so obviously I don't remember it, but I hope to see it when it does appear again. And the comet has been recorded as far back as 240 BC in China and was embroidered onto the world famous Bayeux tapestry. So this souvenir stamp sheet that you can see here, issued in Bolivia in 1986, features scene 32 from the Bayeux tapestry, and the comet can clearly be seen on the upper border there. And the appearance of the comet was celebrated globally on stamps, and here in the UK, the Royal Mail issued a fantastic set of 4 stamps in 1986, which were illustrated by the famous cartoonist Ralph Steadman. And the stamps are very colourful and imaginative. On the bottom right there, you can see a rather disgruntled but comical looking Halley as the comet. Then just to the left of it, an image of 2 comets, which represents seeing it twice in a lifetime. Top right then, we have Giotto spacecraft. And on the top left then, the comet orbiting the sun. And a set of first day covers that I really enjoy collecting were issued by the Presentation Philatelic Services in London between 1984 and 1995. And the card inlay within each cover explains the cachet illustration and depicts a fine art painting or another collectible, which was actually auctioned by Sotheby's of London. So the first day cover that you can see here It's got the Halley's Comet stamps on it, and a beautiful silk cachet there on the left-hand side of a portable refracting telescope, which was manufactured by Peter Dolland. He was a well-known maker of optical instruments, and the telescope was actually sold by Sotheby's at auction in 1985 for £22,000. And it's 26 years this year that Hale-Bopp was discovered. Well, it was a bit longer now, maybe 27, 28. Moving across our skies for approximately 18 months, Hale-Bopp was the most observed comet of the 20th century. It was discovered independently by Alan Hale and Thomas Bopp in the United States on the 23rd of July 1995, and the comet passed perihelion on the 1st of April 1997. It was very bright, and even in light polluted towns and cities, it was visible to the naked eye. And as far as I'm aware, very few stamps were issued to celebrate this exciting event. But on the 1st of April 1997, the Dominican Republic issued a set of stamps depicting the comet positioned against a tropical pink and yellow sky with its two tails of gas and dust clearly illustrated. And in my collection, I have a custom cover commemorating the comet. It was sent to me by a former NASA employee who specializes in making his own covers. And the cover is postmarked at Cloudcroft, New Mexico on the 24th of March 1997. 2 days after the comet made its closest approach to Earth, and Cloudcroft is the location where Alan Hale first made the discovery, and the image on the cover illustrates the position of the comet in the night sky from the date of its discovery to the date it was last observed in the southern hemisphere. And I actually just recently posted this cover off to Alan Hale to sign, and he emailed me a couple of days ago to say it's on its way back to me, so that's really exciting. And yeah, for those keen astronomers amongst us, Comet Neowise would not have passed you by back in 2020. So it was first discovered on March 27th, 2020 by the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, and the comet's closest approach to Earth was on the 23rd of July. And the comet could easily be seen with the naked eye, even in urban areas, and it's now known as one of the brightest comets since the appearance of Hale-Bopp in 1997. And Sark in Guernsey was designated a dark sky island in 2011. And the 10-year anniversary was celebrated last year. So a set of 6 stamps were issued in June commemorating the anniversary, and included a stamp featuring Neowise. And the observations, so the tools of the observers, how have people been observing the sky? So for thousands of years, our ancestors have looked to the sky, they've observed and named the stars and constellations after animals, objects, and mythological characters. And they would worship the solstices and watch the planets traversing across the sky. And all of these early attempts at recording and understanding the sky have been found on the designs of stamps. So the prehistoric monument of Stonehenge in Wiltshire, it's long been studied for its possible connections with ancient astronomy. And the site is aligned in the direction of the sunrise of the summer solstice and the sunset of the winter solstice. And archaeoastronomers have made a range of further claims about the site's connection to astronomy, its meaning and its use. And it has appeared twice on stamps issued in the UK, once in 1990, which you can see on the image there on the left-hand side, celebrating the subject of astronomy. So you can see on the bottom left corner of the stamp, we have a gyroscope. On the right-hand corner there, we have a ship navigating by the stars. We've got Stonehenge in the middle and phases of the moon then arcing along the top. And again, Stonehenge featured in 2005 when there was a set of stamps issued to celebrate World Heritage Sites. And the Nebra Sky disc, this is a bronze disc. It's blue and golden colour, and it was found in Germany in 1999 by metal detectorists. In fact, I think you can go and visit it in London now. I think it's there for a few months in the British Museum, so it'll be worth taking a trip to London to see. And the symbols on the disc are interpreted generally as the sun or full moon, a lunar crescent, and stars, including a cluster of 7 stars interpreted as the Pleiades, and 2 golden arcs along the sides, which are often interpreted to mark the angle between the solstices, may have been added later on. And a final addition was another arc at the bottom, surrounded with multiple strokes, which could be a solar barge with numerous oars, it could be the Milky Way, or maybe even a rainbow. And archaeologists place its origins in the 1st millennium BCE, and the disc may be an astronomical instrument, and it featured on a postage stamp in Germany in 2008, celebrating German archaeology. So yeah, other astronomical instruments that have been attributed to watching and recording our skies include the astrolabe, got the armillary sphere, but perhaps the most important of all is the telescope. And we have a lovely example here of telescope honour stamp produced in Sierra Leone, commemorating the 450th anniversary of Copernicus's death. And telescopes are often housed in observatories. And in 1921, the first stamp depicting an observatory was issued in central Lithuania. It was produced in two forms, you can see there on the top left, perforate and imperforate. And the image on the stamps displays the Poxabut Observatory, which was named after the astronomer Martin Poxabut, famous for his observational work and for computing the orbit of Mercury. And the observatory theme continued. In 1948, the United States printed their first astronomy-themed 3-cent stamp with an image of the Palomar Mountain Observatory, and the stamp was issued to commemorate the observatory's opening. And the observatory houses the Hale Telescope, a 200-inch telescope named after George Hale, a famous American solar astronomer, well known for his work on the discovery of magnetic fields and sunspots. And the reflecting telescope, it was the largest at the time and launched new developments in telescope design, including its mount and mirror. And finally, the last section, the explorers. So from July 1957 to December 1958, scientists from 67 countries participated in various Earth science projects as part of the International Geophysical Year. And to mark the occasion, the US Post Office issued a stamp featuring a striking illustration of the sun, which was in the most active phase of its 11-year cycle, solar cycle 19, which was the 19th solar cycle since 1755. And also depicted is a section of Michelangelo's famous Sistine Chapel painting, The Creation of Adam, which is a nod to a natural curiosity and desire to understand our place in the universe. And the International Geophysical Year came at a time when the Soviet Union and the United States were locked in a heated race to be the first nation to go to space. And the Soviet Union succeeded on the 4th of October 1957, and when Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, was launched into low Earth orbit. And the satellite survived just under 3 months in space before falling back to Earth and burning up in our atmosphere. And the Soviet Union issued its first Sputnik stamp, which you can see there on the left-hand side, on the 4th of November 1957, and the 40 kopeck perforated stamp was a simple design. It's blue and grey in colour, and it illustrates the satellite orbiting the Earth. And the launch of Sputnik has been celebrated globally on stamps, including Romania, Cuba, and Korea. And after the successful launch of Laika, the space dog, aboard Sputnik 2 on the 3rd of November 1957, a further triumph came for the Soviet Union on the 12th of April 1961, when Yuri Gagarin was launched aboard Vostok 1 and orbited the Earth for 108 minutes before he returned to Earth. And Gagarin was the first man in space and the first man to orbit the Earth. And not one to shy away from celebrating their achievements through philately, a plethora of stamps from the Soviet Union commemorating this momentous event exists, including this rather wonderful 10 kopeck stamp. It's a great example of Soviet space propaganda, illustrating Gagarin looking to the stars as Vostok 1 shoots off into the sky above a silhouetted skyline and the date of the launch in the rocket's wake. But whilst the Soviet Union blazed a trail into space, the USA was successful in their own firsts. And on the 20th of July 1969, the crew of Apollo 11 were the first to land on the moon in their lunar module, the Eagle, and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepped onto the moon on the 21st of July 1969. And needless to say, there was an explosion in the issue of stamps and memorabilia celebrating this milestone. And this single 10-cent stamp issued in September, designed by Paul Calais, was issued to celebrate mankind's historic visit to our celestial neighbour. And as you can see, it illustrates Neil Armstrong setting foot on the moon, embarking from Eagle, the lunar lander. And the die proofs of the postage stamp were actually carried to the surface of the moon by the Apollo 11 astronauts. So who is Paul Calais? Well, he was one of the first 8 artists chosen by NASA in 1962 to document the American space program's Project Mercury. He's had the most amazing space art career, spanning more than 40 years. He covered Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and Space Shuttle missions, and he was the only artist present with the Apollo 11 crew on the morning of July 16th, 1969, as they prepared for the historic launch to the moon. And in 1989, for the 20th anniversary of the moon landing, the Postal Service asked Paul's son, Chris Calais, to design the $2.40 priority mail stamp, and Paul to design a first day cover cachet for the issue. And I'm very lucky to have a signed cover, which they both signed in my collection. And then in 1994, for the 25th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing, Paul and Chris jointly designed 2 US stamps commemorating the event. So on the right-hand side there, we have a 29-cent commemorative stamp. On the left, then a $9.95 express mail stamp. And yeah, if you just go onto Google and type in their names, they have a website and you can check out all the stamp designs and amazing space art they've done. It's very, very impressive. In the past couple of years has been no exception to the issue of Apollo 11 stamps to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. The United States Postal Service issued 2 vertical forever stamps on the 20th of July 2019. Simple design. The images depict the iconic photograph of Buzz Aldrin taken by Neil Armstrong. You can see there on the left, and on the right hand side there, the Apollo 11 landing site on the moon, the Sea of Tranquility, which is marked with a dot. In the Isle of Man post office, they've kept the Apollo theme going, and in 2019 they issued some fantastic stamps. They released a set of 8 stamps to commemorate the 50th anniversary of man landing on the moon. So the One Small Step issue explores 50 years of lunar exploration, and it tells a story of the first 12 Apollo missions, and they depict famous images including mission control at NASA. We've got Earthrise taken by William Anders during the Apollo 8 mission, and you can see the first footprints on the moon as well. And I just love the details of these stamps. So around the perforations are famous quotes from people involved in the missions, including President Kennedy and the astronauts from each mission. And each stamp features map coordinates as well of a place relating to the theme of each stamp. So for example, the Project Apollo stamp that you can see, it displays the coordinates of Rice Stadium along the bottom left vertical there, where Kennedy delivered his speech announcing the Apollo program in 1962. And just there down on the right hand vertical, you can see his famous quote, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade." Okay, so future celebrations, just the last couple of slides now. So we have seen that the celebration and commemoration of astronomical achievements, technological advancements and discoveries, it's produced an endless amount of stamps, covers and postmarks. So what will the future bring? Well, Comet Leonard was discovered in January 2021. It was a naked eye comet, but only visible in dark sky areas. Will that appear on a stamp in the future? Obviously, we've got the James Webb Telescope, which was launched on Christmas Day last year, and it's going to succeed the Hubble Space Telescope. We've got ESA's Solar Orbiter, which was launched in 2020 and began routine scientific operations in 2021. We've got OSIRIS-REx as well, which was launched in 2016 and has traveled to near-Earth object Bennu, and it will return samples in 2023. And then, of course, we've got Artemis, where NASA plan to build a base camp on the moon and return humans to the moon by 2025, including the first woman. So it's really exciting time for Philately. I hope to see some of these exciting events and milestones on stamps. And yeah, I aim to promote and teach as much as I can. And just quickly, if you're interested, how do you get started? Well, quite simply, just do some research on the internet. Lots of auction websites out there. You can just check out eBay, Delcamp and Colnect. If you've got a special interest, such as Sputnik, you can just type in Sputnik stamps into any of these websites and you'll be amazed at what comes back. Join an astronomy stamp society or just a general stamp society. So we have the Astro Space Stamp Society. It's free to join now. I'm the social ambassador, if you like. We've got a page on Facebook and you can sign up for free on our main website and you'll get an issue of Orbit, which is our, I think it comes out every 3 months, a magazine, and it's usually about 40 pages long. It's amazing. You've got the American Philatelic Society, you've got the American Topical Association, British Thematic Association. And yeah, just get in touch with other collectors on Facebook, join some groups. And there's some brilliant books out there. So we've got The Race to the Moon by Umberto Cavallaro and Stamping Through Astronomy by Renato Ducati. You can buy some stamp catalogues, and there's lots of magazines out there as well that you can buy in supermarkets and shops. So yeah, lots and lots of resources out there for you. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I hope you're all still awake. And if you want to get in touch, there's my email address, and I'm on Twitter and Facebook as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Katrin. That was a very interesting talk and a very unusual way, for me at least, look at astronomy. So I really did appreciate that. I'm going to ask the first question. I'm sure there'll be many others. Why are they called Cinderella stamps?
Oh, do you know what? I forgot what the answer is to this. It's because I thought it was because there was something that they were not. I've forgotten what the answer is. I do know it. It might come to me.
Okay,
Yeah, I just assumed it's because they look like something that they aren't, like Cinderella was.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I was
But it's
trying
not
to
as
imagine.
interesting as that.
I was trying to think of what the connection could be, but I couldn't see what it was. But I'm glad I'm not the only one.
It's just totally escaped me. But yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. So, questions. Who's got a question? Robert.
Hi, that was fascinating. Thank you very much. I've got some flown covers that have been in space. What I was going to ask you is, do you have any rocket mail in your collection? Margaret Morris, way back in the 60s, bought in an auction. She discovered rocket mail that was flown in Scotland. And that led to the reformation of the Paisley Rocketeer Society in 1966 with the Scottish rocket pioneer John Stewart, which in the late 70s I became a member of that, and I've actually flown rocket mail.
Okay. I actually haven't, and I did briefly touch upon the subject when I wrote an article for Gibbons Stamp Monthly last year, because there's a guy in India has I think he's got like one of the biggest rocket mail collections in the world. Right. And he shared some photographs with me when the chickens, right. they flew the chickens via rocket across the river in India. And yeah, it was a very fascinating topic to read upon because it's not something that I'd heard about before. So yeah, I'm aware of the subject, but I don't have anything in my collection.
Right, thanks.
You'll have to share some of your covers. What was the name of the name of the group? Sorry.
It was the Paisley Rocketeer Society.
Okay.
It doesn't exist. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore because it was died about 10, 15 years ago, and that was the end of it.
Okay.
I do have. I had friends that passed away in Florida, Russell Smith and Wanda Smith, and they were in the Titusville Spaceport Stamp Club. And they produced covers. Russell was a retired space worker at the Cape. And every time the space shuttle went up into space, about a month later, I'd got a big pile of covers. And he would take them in his truck out to the space center, and they would be stamped, the rollover for the shuttle from the orbital processing facility to the VAB. And then out to the pad, roll out, and then launch, and then landing. And then I got what was called a dual cancellation, which the envelope had the launch and landing. And sometimes the shuttle was diverted to Edwards Air Force Base. And Wanda would send me to apologize. There was now going to be a delay because all the covers would have to be sent to California. They'd be stamped. And they would, tonight, for example, if Russell was still alive, I don't know if the Stamp Club still exists or not, but he would have been taking covers out for the rollout of Artemis at 9 o'clock tonight,
Yeah.
So I do have a pile of these covers, and I've got the famous one, I think, that's flown on the Challenger. A stamp cover in 1983, I think it was. Yeah,
I think I have that one too, when it was stamped. So you say it's got the dual postmarks on it, hasn't it?
I've got the moon one that you showed, but it's just a fake, unfortunately. 15 cover. I had a lot of conversations with Colonel Warden about that. He was not at all happy about that.
Well, no, I met him a few years ago, and I wanted to take a cover along with me, and I thought better of it because I was like, he might just tell me to bugger off.
Yes.
So
I had David Scott. I found out he was in Dundee, coming to Dundee, so I invited him up to the observatory. And I put on an Apollo 15 exhibition, and I was going to get space stamps, and then I suddenly remembered.
Yeah, better not. Yeah. Oh dear.
Right.
Yeah, no, I avoided that. I just got him to sign a photograph instead. So yeah, I didn't want to fall out with him.
Okay, so Alistair, you had the question.
Yeah, just a great talk, Katrin.
Thank you.
Really enjoyable. I particularly like these sort of, I'll not call it off topic, but slightly slightly away from really focused astronomical research talks. They're very enjoyable. I had a question about the rarity aspect of the stamps, which are misprints. Is that becoming less and less of a thing that happens with modern technology, or is that something that continues to happen regularly even now?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think because they're just mass produced now, that's probably quite a rare thing to have a rare misprint. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just generally done, like I said, mass produced. So yeah, I think there may have been an error on the Roman stamps that were issued. When was that now? Was that last year or the year before? Something was missing off the stamp, but I don't really know what became of that, if it was classed as, a rare error that would, make it an expensive stamp. But yeah, it's not something that I come across frequently now in rarities. But it's a good question, and yeah.
And if they noticed that the stamps were obviously wrong, would they immediately bin them, do you think, or would they offer them up?
I think they get recalled. Well, I think once they've been issued and they're out there in the public realm, they can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, before they reach the public, then I think they can just, they just won't get issued. They won't get sold. So
I just remember from my childhood, I remember my father telling me that there was a penny black stamp hidden behind a mirror somewhere in the house. And I remember reading years later that even within the penny blacks, there's a rarity depending on how close towards the edge of the book that it was, which I thought was, I just thought, seemed very, a very odd series of criteria for making stamp, for deciding how rare the stamp was.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not too sure about the penny black story, but I think there's lots of books out there about the penny black if you're interested in reading up on it.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't mean you went around smashing mirrors in your appearance.
Yeah.
No, the mirror was pointed out to me and I knew where it was.
Okay. Any other questions?
There's one from the YouTube channel.
Oh, yes. Yes. So Alan M from YouTube says, can you tell us the story of Peter Gibbons and the space shuttle?
No. I don't know. I'm not aware of that story.
Yes, nor am I, I'm afraid.
Peter
Gibbons.
No, I'd have to look that up.
G-I-N-Z.
No, it's not something I'm familiar with, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I've not heard of that one either. I don't know what that is.
Let's see. So any other questions?
I am not sure who Peter Gibbons is, but Google tells me that he may have been a displaced Czechoslovakian during the Second World War. I don't know if that helps.
Someone I've heard of before.
Narrow it down.
No, nor me.
He does have an entry on the NASA website though, so there must be something there.
Yeah. I'll have to
Alan
look them.
He doesn't show up in the Cinderella story at all, does he?
Well, there was a special stamp issued back in the 80s by the US Post Office, a space stamp, which is on that cover that went up the Challenger. And I think that the idea was you could post a letter to the space station and you would need to, but I think it was £10 at the time because the stamp was very expensive. I wonder if he was the guy that designed it.
I'm not sure if that's the case, but Alan has further replied that his picture was on, I assume, Challenger when it exploded, which may have been a similar thing to what you were talking about, Robert. Certainly, clearly a story there to be explored.
Yeah. Have a look.
So, any other questions? I see Ewan has said that Ewan Ellen, our membership secretary, says he enjoyed the talk. Says something else to start collecting.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, that's the thing about philately. It can be as cheap or as expensive as you want it to be. So, yeah, it's not a bad hobby to start off in, I suppose.
Yeah.
Perhaps, sorry, Andrew, just perhaps a question that you didn't answer, but one can only imagine. Do you have a rough estimate of how many stamps you have collected?
Oh, do you know, I've been asked this. I don't know. A lot. Unfortunately, with the stamp collect, because I have a full-time job as well.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel like I have very little time to sort through all my stamps, so I do have quite a lot. I tend to collect covers more than individual stamps. I do like first day covers purely because
we are astronomers here, so an estimate that's just to the nearest factor of 10 is perfectly acceptable.
I wouldn't say it's anywhere near 1,000. Yeah, it must be a good few hundred, I would have thought. I'm just looking now. But yeah, it's something I feel like when I retire, I'll finally get around to sorting everything out. But yeah, it's being a philatelist, obviously you need to spend a lot of time organizing the stamps into, well, whichever order you want it to be, dates or theme or whatever. And it does take up a lot of time. It is a time-consuming hobby, I think. But yeah, they're all stored in boxes and albums at the moment. But yeah, I have a good few hundred, I'd say.
Yeah, well, certainly a hobby. It's a good match because on the cloudy nights and in the summer, you can turn your attention more to the stamps, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I've said in articles that I've written, you know, on even when it's cloudy and rainy, you can still enjoy the wonders of the universe from stamp collecting, and you can learn something and look at some pretty amazing images just on tiny pieces of paper, you know. So yeah, astronomy doesn't have to be weather dependent if you're a stamp collector. So
I know, yeah, it's very good. So unless there are any last questions occurring to people, I'd just like to thank Katrin again for a very enjoyable talk, and hopefully one day we can host you in Glasgow in person. You never know, that can happen. And,
yeah, that'd be nice to see everyone. And come to the observatory one day.
Yes, indeed. Yes, I don't know if you can commemorate it in a stamp, but I certainly wouldn't object.
I hope that goes well for you. I hope it finishes, you know, it's finished very soon and you can enjoy using it.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Well, it has been a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks again, Katrin, and thanks everyone else for attending.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Katrin. Thanks very much. Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, that was brilliant.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.